Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today, I'm joined by retired Lieutenant Colonel Kathy Lowrey Gallowitz. Kathy is the founder and CEO of Vanguard Veteran, where she equips civilian employers to become veteran champions. She also equips faith community leaders to build military ministries. She served nearly 30 years in the Air Force as a nurse and public affairs officer and retired as a lieutenant colonel. Kathy is the author of Beyond Thank You for Your Service, the Veteran Champion Handbook for Civilians. In this book, she describes how easy it is for employers and other citizens to become veteran champions. Now, I'm excited to have her on the show to talk about the idea of a veteran champion and why you should hire a military veteran. So, Kathy, welcome to the show.
Hey, John, thanks for having me. Thanks for including me in your boat, buddy.
Yes, actually, we're all in the same boat, which is the name of my second book, by the way.
Yeah,
So you're on board.
I love that. I love that.
I need to pipe you in because of your rank and give you a salute. But thanks for coming on the show, and thank you for all the work you're doing with veterans. And I'm excited to talk about it. Maybe just give the audience a little bit of what you did in the military, almost 30 years, and where you developed this passion for veterans and wanting to help help civilians understand how to deal with veterans.
Okay, John, in our preparation for the podcast, I shared with you that my brother went to Annapolis. Well, I grew up as a Navy brat, growing up, moving around the world, supporting my dad's Navy career. Then my parents paid for nursing school, and Air Force nursing was my first choice career. Why? Because of the leadership focus, education, travel, physical fitness, all those great things, and the desire to serve, of course. And then I don't know, about midway through my career, I switched over to public affairs. So the crowning achievement of my career was to build a statewide outreach program for the Ohio National Guard to educate and engage civilians in support of troops and their families. And this was done in response to 9/11, because as you know, the reserve component, both the reserve and guard, was deploying like no time in our nation's history. We were deploying alongside our active duty brothers and sisters, and we're an operational force instead of a strategic reserve. So my book, Beyond Thank You for Your Service, showcases more than 20, mostly Ohio civilian veteran champions who improve quality of life, workforce, or community. And so the term veteran champion came from my experience with these civilians who use their circle of influence with a little bit of knowledge about military culture, with a desire to serve and give back, and some encouragement, if not inspiration, to do more. And I got to tell you, more often than not, people will tell me, more women probably than guys, but they will say, doing this work gives me goosebumps. I had a gal, I was having lunch with a fellow business colleague recently, and she was explaining to me how she helped start a veteran hiring program in her company. And she says to me, I get goosebumps when I tell you about it. And that was 10 years ago for her.
Yes.
So that example just sort of signifies how meaningful it is for civilians to truly go beyond thank you for your service in substantive ways that builds relationship and improves community and workforce.
I love that. And I think it's really, I love the title of the book because I think you're right. There's a lot of people that are never served in the military. They'll say thank you for your service and they find out you're a veteran, but they don't know what else they can do. Right. I think that's the challenge.
And they really don't know what that means. I mean, I think it's sincere, but just for fun, other people have said, they say, thank you for your service and sacrifice, which might be even more sincere, show an indication of even increased knowledge. And then one female veteran friend of mine said, I like to say to other veterans, thank you for wearing the uniform.
Yeah.
Isn't that special? Because what does it connotate to you, John, when you hear that?
Well, yeah, there was a sense of pride. There was a sense of duty. There was a sense of honor wearing that uniform. It was a privilege. I had two grandfathers serve in World War II. I was following in their footsteps. I mean, I was doing, and I have a son that's in the Navy now, and it's like I'm doing my duty as my grandfathers did before me.
Yep. Yep. And that is even, I think, even more understanding of kind of what wearing the uniform means to our service members.
Yeah.
But the veteran champion idea also stemmed from my experience growing up as a military brat, moving so much. And, finally, after by the age of 35, I'd lived in at least 20 different communities.
Wow.
Right. And
Yeah.
in my adult career, I've had at least 17 different jobs in 6 different sort of industries. Right.
Yeah.
So, not only are military people adaptable and resilient, but, our experiences are different from civilians or people generally who don't move as much. And so when I started to establish roots at the age of 35 in a mid-sized community in Ohio, I was like, wow, I just started to reflect on some of the things that maybe I'd missed or didn't have. And so it helped me really take further stock of that and investigate that more, and really kind of led me in the direction of cultivating civilian veteran champions.
I love that. I love that. So where do we need these veteran champions the most?
I believe that we need them, that employers are critically important to be veteran champions. And I think that our faith communities play a significant role in post-military transition. But then lawyers, oh my gosh, the good stuff lawyers can do, educators, be they public school for the dependents or, helping service members graduate and succeed, or veterans succeed in higher education. I mean, we really need them everywhere, but I prioritized employers and clergy. Employers, because we all need a paycheck that and a mission that we find purposeful and meaningful.
Mm.
That gives service members a great deal of satisfaction, and in a lot of cases, maybe even more important than the paycheck. I don't know, but then that the clergy piece is fostering military ministries to promote sense of connection, sense of belonging, fostering practical support and spiritual resiliency. That's what military ministries are all about.
I love that. And, I just, from my experience, I came out of the military, went into corporate America, and I was lost. Even before I went to high school, I had a dream of being in the Navy and being on submarines. And I
Wow.
achieved my lifetime
Wow.
goals at 24 years old. And then I left the
Wow.
military. So I had no purpose anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was really tough. I went, like most people, I got out and got a job and, started a family, all that sort of thing. But for 7 years, I was lost until I
Yep.
finally found my purpose again and found a
Yep.
mission again. And I think that's a common story with some
Yes.
veterans, is that we do want purpose. We do want a mission. We do want to be part of something bigger than
Yes, sir.
just a job.
Yeah.
Right? Is that the case?
That's the case. And the other thing I want to add is that who does this work, John? Who is helping our citizenry understand the differences of military culture, understand the value of veteran talent, and purposefully harnessing what our citizens know through their circle of influence to help our veterans come all the way home, so to speak, to smoothly reintegrate into society. The VA does a great job with healthcare. I'm a proponent of the VA, and that's a hugely complex full-time job.
Yeah.
And the DoD, their job is to promote national defense strategies. And so I think we're missing the third leg of the stool big time in our society by not having a concerted, proactive program that educates our citizenry about what they can do, because no action is too small.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So if I mean, this is a loaded question. You probably take
Yeah.
the whole podcast, but why
Yeah.
should employers hire military veterans, in your opinion?
Because the return on investment makes the workforce stronger, pure and
Yeah.
simple. It's
Yeah.
a win for the veteran to have a job with meaning and purpose that pays the bills. And research shows that veterans are more productive, loyal, stay at the jobs longer. And when employers are, if you will, veteran ready,
Mm,
They can even generate cost savings.
mm,
So the Society of Human Resource Management in 2019 did a study that says employers report 68% of employers report that veterans are better than, if not much better than, their non-veteran counterparts. And a 2021 study by the same organization reports that human resource professionals believe that 91% of veterans stay as long, if not longer, than their civilian peers at the works in jobs.
yeah. Well, we were talking before we started the show. I did 22 years in corporate, and I hired a lot of veterans just because I am a veteran and
Yeah.
I know what I'm getting, right? I'm getting somebody that was challenged in their youth, right? And, given a lot of responsibility at a young age. And so they show up on time, they work hard, they have something what I call grit. So when things get tough,
Yes.
they don't quit.
Yes.
And they've been through like some sort of a crucible and they've proven themselves. And so they have a sense of confidence about them. They're able to take on tasks that maybe others can't. And so they are these special, they've always been special employees in my organizations. They're people that can do more than maybe what's on their job description. And
Nice.
is that what you've seen as well, your experience with helping employers bring on veterans?
Well, that's why employers strengthen their workforce when they do it.
Hmm.
Tell me, where did you find this veteran talent? How did you go about connecting with veterans?
So, I did at one point, I was actually posting at different Navy bases at their, what is it, the transition
Yep.
department,
Assistance program. Yeah.
assistant, a transition
Yeah.
assistant. So I was actually posting jobs there. And
Good.
then I've actually engaged with recruiters specifically looking for military veterans,
Yep.
and also just screening as I screen the candidates and look at resumes. Yeah, I'm looking because for me at least, the number one reason I hire somebody is I do look for grit. I want to see that you have overcome something difficult in your life and you're not going to be
Yep.
stopped when things get hard. And so for me, it's like an easy thing with, oh, they did 2 deployments in Iraq. That's somebody who doesn't quit. That's
Yes.
somebody that I know is going to be resilient.
And so the resumes,
Yeah.
did your team look at the resumes of veterans once, or did they look at resumes of veterans more than once?
Yeah, I would say more than once. Yeah. Just
And
because we've had such a positive experience with veterans that we say, well, that's, maybe we're lumping everybody in the same barrel, but we're like, we've had a lot of success with Navy veterans. Like, for example, we hire a lot of because our business is a lot of electrical mechanical. We
yeah,
find that aircraft mechanics, the people that work on fighter jets and helicopters and they're really good at figuring things out and solving problems that are both electrical and mechanical. They're great hires. So we look for those particular skill sets in people.
yep. Well, and that's what Vanguard Veteran does, is identify your top need positions and align you and connect you with sources of that talent. I believe in developing proactive relationships with
Mm,
people who have access to veterans.
yeah.
I myself don't have a pool of veterans that are standing by ready to hire. I know the people who are involved in that. And so I customize my approach to help employers do that. And then I also assist with, okay, what are military skills translators? How do you interview on board to create a veteran employee resource group and other retention tactics? Because
Mm,
again, the bottom line is it's a win-win. It's a win-win when the veteran has the right job, when there's the right fit, and the and the employer knows how to harness the skills that veterans bring to the workforce, leverage them
yeah.
in their entirety, really, to get the benefit.
That makes a lot of sense. And so I'm just thinking as we're talking, like for me, like I was a veteran. So for me, it was like I'm looking for these people. I know the kind of things that they can
Yes.
do for our company.
Yes.
So I can connect the two worlds of civilian
Yes.
and military. But
Yes.
what if you're just in a company and you're a civilian manager and you want to hire some good people? How do you even find veterans to hire? And how do you hire interview them and how do you, like you mentioned, translate their skills? Like this doesn't make much sense to me, that they worked on this Abrams tank. I don't even know what that is, so
So,
how do you
you're asking a lot of questions. Let me jump in here, and you're right. Those are the reasons that I do what I do because
Mm,
the worlds are so different. You knew to go to a transition assistance program because you'd been
yeah,
through it, right?
yeah.
And you knew kind of how to connect the dots, but most of our citizens, most of our employers don't know any of that. They're just
Mm,
completely lost. And then, oh, by the way, they might be influenced by myths and misconceptions that hurt our
yeah.
veteran candidates. Something I want to highlight today is military skills translators. If anybody listening does not know what those are, I encourage you to go to O''NET military crosswalk. And John, I'll provide that link for the show
Okay.
notes and a couple other links, but go to that to compare the military job classification with what kind of civilian jobs that job classification is well suited for. And it is so interesting. Quick example, an 11 Bravo in the Army is an infantryman, the person that goes to war, carries the gun, and does the tough work on the battlefield, up to and including killing the enemy, right? Well, you would wonder, okay, gee, what's this person going to do in civilian life? Well, if you use the military crosswalk, and there's other military skills translators out there besides O''NET, but what comes up is 20 different job titles that this person's well prepared for. And interestingly, the top job on the list is a training and development manager.
Interesting.
Now, of
Yeah.
course, you would probably not, that would be hard for me to connect the dots, not being in the Army. Okay. But so then it has a bunch of knowledge, skills, and abilities. So you can kind of compare the resume to the KSAs and say, okay, well, what do I need to ferret out during the interview? What kind of
Mm,
behavioral kinds of questions should I be asking to really try to find a good match? And I think ultimately the match of level, where you enter the company is probably ultimately really the most important thing, because if somebody comes in real low, they're real frustrated. They may not stay real long. If they come in real high, they're maybe not prepared. And I don't know that that happens very often anyway. Usually military people kind of get hired below their capability.
yeah.
So the military skills translators help you at least maybe know some of the questions to ask.
That's fantastic. I know my experience too. I got hired in low in a company. I went
Yes.
from like being a naval officer on a submarine, doing some pretty tough things and
Yes.
making some serious decisions, to an associate design engineer where I had a cubicle and a stapler, and
Yeah.
but in 5 years I was running my first manufacturing plant.
Good for
So
you.
you know what
That
I'm
was
saying?
fast.
So
That was
yeah, it was
fast.
fairly fast, but
Yeah.
again, I had bosses who said, "Oh, you're in the wrong job." Like, so they recognized it, right?
Yes.
But I was brought in a low level. But to me, I was always like, well, I'll figure it out. And, typical military attitude, I'll just figure it out and I'll exceed here too.
Good for you. And, I think that's a testament to your character, because, potentially some of us are less patient than that,
Mm,
and
mm.
get more frustrated with the shift in, I don't know, I'll just say status or authority. I mean, that's really tough for some people depending on how long they've served.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it makes sense to me because you don't know the culture of the organization doesn't know you, and there's a honeymoon period, if not a baptism or whatever, to really find your fit. But the service member, it's a double-edged sword here, John, this whole hiring process. Our service members don't come out of the military prepared. I mean, it's getting
Sure.
better. It's
Yeah.
getting better. Okay. But they don't know how to self-promote. The resumes are still, not great, but I think getting better. They don't really know who they are or what they really want to do. I mean, that from a leadership perspective, right?
Right. Right.
We have to be self-aware and know what our strengths are, and, move in that direction. And oftentimes we're so used to being so flexible in the military and doing what the needs of the military are as compared to really what makes you tick. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so the service member is kind of at a disadvantage. And certainly the civilian doesn't understand that military people don't like to use the word I. We use the word we, right?
Yes.
That
Yeah.
we have sort of rigid body posture, and we're overly formal, and we don't necessarily like small talk,
Right.
right? Right. And
You're
and so
talking about me here.
see, I know it. I know it.
Yeah.
And if there's just some level of understanding and perspective and appreciation, oh, okay, I get why that person's that way, and this is the tactic I should use to help them.
Yeah.
It really builds bridges.
I love that. I love that. I think one of the challenges when I first came in was, through the military, through the Navy, was it was always a qualification process. You were always getting
Ah,
qualified and
yeah.
leveling up, and so you knew what you needed to do to get to the next level. When you got to the civilian world, there was none of that. So, in fact, I even talk about it in my book. It's like I had to create my own qualification program when I got out of the military, so that I created on my own, and I used the same things I learned in the Navy. Like, okay, go find the more senior people, learn from them, uh, go to the shop floor, follow them, listen to them, do all the things that you did to get qualified in the military to get qualified in the civilian world. But there's
Yes.
nothing there. It, like you
No.
said,
Career advancement
there's no
pathway.
manual. There's no you're
Right.
you're
Right.
just thrown to the wolves. And if you don't manage your own personal career,
Yep.
that I can see some people struggling to figure out, like, what do I do next? Or how do I learn this job? And there's no, because there is no formal qualification process like there is in the military.
Well, and for me, growing up in a military family, then joining the service, I learned that we all have a place on the team.
Yeah.
It's not an inferior place necessarily, but somebody's in charge. There's a right way and a wrong way to do things,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And then at the age of 40, opened up a healthcare practice.
Mm.
What a paradigm shift. I was the primary decision maker, just like you when you were the plant manager, right? Okay, you were the one who was creating the culture. Now, I was never a commander, okay, but um, I just I think in the military we sometimes have more of an external locus of control. That's kind of a nursing term, as compared to an internal locus of control. We're kind of responding to our environment, what we're told, what the demand is at the time. But in civilian life, to really succeed, you need an internal locus of control and understand self, have
Yep.
good communication skills, problem solving skills, and communication skills, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And all those things are important in the military too, but we get so task focused with our head down, performing the mission, doing the next checklist, you know. It's more involved than that, but that's about the best I can do in the time allowed.
That's perfect. So, what you mentioned something earlier, and I was just going to give you a chance to talk about it. Some of the common myths and misconceptions about veterans and what needs to be. So, how do we clear the air here and get some of those things worked out?
Well, I think the prevalent one really is that people are afraid of PTSD.
Mm.
That it's kind of sensationalized in the media, and the tragic situations where something horrific happens, and oh, by the way, they happen to have served in the military. Well, that is always brought out, it seems like, when something really bad happens. And so there are those cases, but the Department of VA says, Veterans Affairs, that 20% of Iraq and Afghanistan veterans have PTSD. So what does that mean? 80% do
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Vietnam era veterans, about 30% will have it in their lifetime. The other thing that's important to remember, that if 2/3 of us, and that's the whole country, experience trauma, 1% of us serve in the military, you're more likely to meet a civilian with a post-traumatic stress or PTSD based on, a car accident or divorce or domestic violence or than really you are to meet a veteran, because there's fewer of us. So research shows that people with PTSD are not necessarily more violent. Uh, and I know civilians who are proud. There's one of them featured in my book who's proud to say that that I can manage my PTSD, I can manage my triggers by being aware, by through counseling, and I can live a full life in spite of my PTSD. And this one guy in my book says it helps me when I am helping veterans with PTSD.
Mm.
It helps me manage my triggers. So that's the biggest one. And the other one is communication style. Right? Because oftentimes, most veterans look like you, they don't look like me, right? because about 15-17% of the force is female. But, oftentimes our military guys are, kind of, uh, confident. I think you used that word, and maybe direct in their speech. And my husband, who's a career Army vet, 4 combat tours, says, I don't want to waste good Army oxygen, right? If people just go on and on and
Yes.
on, they don't get to the point they're not doing bluff, bottom line up front, right? So, but what I encourage employers to do is give that employee feedback, right, John? We are
Yes.
used to getting feedback in the military, and most veterans are pretty thick-skinned and know that feedback is part of the deal, right?
Yeah.
So if their communication style is, intimidating people or making people feel uncomfortable, give that veteran employee some coaching, some feedback, invest in them, because it will pay off in spades.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So when people get your book, what are the things they're going to find in the book that's going to help them? Who's the audience for the book?
The audience, frankly, is our citizenry. It's a
Hmm.
broad audience, because there's different chapters focused on different segments of society: employers, healthcare providers, lawyers, educators, community leaders generally, and clergy. And so each chapter is chock full of practical strategies that you can do through your circle of influence to improve a veteran's quality of life, and by so doing, improving yours, right? And or improving workforce and community. Certainly, one of the best things anybody can do is, connect with a veteran and build a trusting relationship, whether you're a neighbor, a church member, or an employer. Get to know that veteran as a person. The old saying goes, if you've met one veteran, you've met one veteran, because we're all so different. We're all so different.
Yeah.
But it's the book is focused on practical strategies. It's a how-to manual, basically. If you're an employer, there's strategies on how to hire, how to start a veteran employee resource group, and so on, for different people in different areas of society.
And it makes a lot of sense, because I think there's a lot of people that have questions and they don't even know where to begin.
Yes.
And something like this puts it all in their hands, and they can sort of answer a lot of their questions, in one place.
In the back of the book, I talk about, okay, what are some strategies to connect with a veteran? I mean, you don't start with, did you ever kill anybody, right? I mean, that seems obvious, but sometimes we forget, right?
Yeah.
And then it also talks about how to support someone who may be struggling, which certainly works well for civilians, but sometimes the stakes might be a little bit higher if you're a veteran, because we have a pretty high suicide rate, and because weapons are part of our toolkit, and we're not intimidated by weapons, and so violent suicide is unfortunately something that happens way too often.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's for sure. Yeah, it's interesting. It's funny, because my son is in the Navy. He's actually out at sea right now, and
Wow.
and it's interesting, because he started college and he decided he didn't want to finish up his degree. He decided he wanted to join the Navy, and we supported it. But I told him, I said, when you get out, you belong to the biggest fraternity, sorority, fraternity, this biggest group of people, because that's what I've discovered throughout my whole life, is that there's just, everywhere you go, there's a customer that was a veteran. There is a supplier that's a veteran. There is a future employer that's a veteran. So you're part of this really big community. And like you said, every veteran's different. We all have different experiences in the military, but we sort of connect with each other really well, And so if you have veterans already in your workforce, they're a good source to try to ask the question, how do I hire veterans, or what should I look out for? Yes.
Get them involved in every aspect of the employee life cycle. Take them out to job fairs, have them talk veteran to prospective job veteran candidate, right? Ask them how you can improve your systems in your workplace, to get a committee or a employee resource group started. But ask what, listen, and then respond, because they are very mission focused, and more often than not, want the best for you and the company. Now, you talked about the common bond that's generated so quickly. That's why military ministries are so effective, because
Mm.
uh, about 55% of Iraq and Afghanistan veterans feel disconnected from mainstream America, and 40% have a difficult time finding meaning and purpose and or regaining touch with their spirituality.
Mm.
So what better place than in a place of worship where they're hospitable, and spirituality predominates, and there's a respected role for clergy. What better place to gather people who have that common bond to help jumpstart relationships, connectivity, and promote healing, or just, help them find friends, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's it, just having those friends, those connections, that a community of people to support them, a supportive community. I know, for example, our church is filled with veterans. So I have our pastor is a former Army Ranger, and
oh,
we have another submarine veteran, which is strange, and we have Army veterans, Air Force. So we're Marine Corps. So we have a lot of veterans at our church, and we're not even in a military town either. It's
well,
just
let's
sort of
talk.
we all, yeah.
Let's talk about military ministry later, because I know we're
Okay.
probably running short on time. But the other thing that's really important that anybody can do, besides working on developing a trusting relationship with a service member or a military connected person, meeting their spouse too,
Mhm.
right, is, back in the day, we used to call it this little black book, right, of all your contacts, right, all the people you know. Well, I encourage you to open up your contact list
Yeah.
and start referring that veteran to a mechanic, a barber,
Yeah.
a babysitter. Oh, but most importantly, someone who might be hiring, because I know this veteran, or I care about this veteran. I think you should give this person a first, second, and third
Mhm.
look.
Yeah.
Invite them to your book club, invite them to your church, right? Help them get connected, because we don't have a support system more often than not, whether you served 4 years or 24 years, whether you go back home to where you left, your support network has shifted. You have changed. They have changed, right? And if you serve 24 years, you're you're totally indoctrinated by the military mindset, right?
Right.
And then you move somewhere else maybe, and you have to start all over.
Yeah.
So any
Yeah.
connections, trusting relationships and connections are just something that anybody can do.
I love that. I love that. So what message would you like to leave with our listeners today?
If you are not already a veteran champion, I invite you to be a part of the win by joining the Veteran Champion movement. If you're an employer, I'm going to offer John a veteran ready assessment link that you can take. And then I'd love to do a 30-minute consultation with you to see how maybe I can come alongside you. If you have a faith community, I'll offer a military ministry quiz. And I also have a monthly coaching call I do on the first Sundays. For employers who would like to learn some veteran hiring fundamentals, I invite you to examine my Veteran Talent Academy, which you can Google and find. There are courses that I offer on a reoccurring basis, in person and virtual, to just jumpstart your veteran hiring program and help you adopt some best practices without having to do trial and error on your own.
No, that's fantastic. And we'll get all those links here in the show notes below. And the book is Beyond Thank You for Your Service. We'll put links to that book as well. Kathy, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing this. I think you gave us a lot of things to think about when it comes to engaging and hiring veterans and helping the veteran community, even if you don't have any experience in the military. And there's a lot that we all can do. And I think you've shed a lot of light on that.
Thank you. I'd like to share my email address real quick. Of course,
Sure.
my website is vanguardveteran.com. You can find information for employers and military ministry, as well as a wide diversity of other resources, information. And if you'd like to reach me, please contact me at Kathy with a K and a Y, Kathy at Vanguard Veteran, singular, not plural, no periods, Kathy at vanguardveteran.com. John, I appreciate you having me, my friend, and don't give up the ship.
Absolutely. And we'll put links on all those resources in the show notes. Kathy, thanks again for coming on the show. This has been fantastic.
Appreciate you.
Thank you. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying, take care and lead well.